Maryland football has way too many question marks.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you for making us part of your day. And I'm also doing work at InsideBlackandGold.net. So make sure you guys head over to InsideBlackandGold.net for all your latest Terps news. I think that Maryland football has way too many question marks on this team. And I think there's way too many different things that Maryland football has to address this offseason that they have started to address. But I just think there's too many question marks on this team. An offseason is all about addressing the question marks. It's about addressing your needs, about getting what you desire in the transfer portal, what you need, what last year you didn't do well. It's about getting better at those things and hopefully filling a lot of those holes. But to me, Maryland football almost has too many holes to fill, almost has too many question marks to go about, where I think it's kind of a big concern going into next year. And I'm not saying we're not going to be a good team next year. I'm not saying we're not going to be better, but I just think at a certain point, there's too much uncertainty with the program and where we're at, from the coaching staff to the players, specifically the players and the personnel, but the coaching staff as well. I think there are so many question marks that it's concerning for Maryland football, the amount that it feels like we have to address, the amount of things that it feels like we have to get better at, that we have to improve this offseason, and that we have to address. And I just think at a certain point, you have too many question marks. I feel like when I'm looking at a lot of teams in the Big Ten, whether it's a high-level team in the playoffs like an Oregon or an Ohio State or a Penn State, or a middle-level team like an Illinois, a Wisconsin, those types of teams, I think that a lot of teams have big question marks going into the offseason, but they don't have question marks at every single position group. They're going to feel good about certain position groups. Like they might have a quarterback at who's returning, who's going to be the quarterback next year, but they feel good about their offensive line and the receiver group. They might have a question mark at running back, but they feel good about their linebacker room. For me, Maryland football, I don't know if we have that balance where it's like we have questions here, but we feel solidified there. I don't think we have that type of balance where I'm looking at this team and I'm saying, from a team that was pretty bad last year, it's not like we get a bunch of guys back. It feels like we've lost almost a lot of players. One in the portal, lost a lot of guys in our portal. We lost our entire quarterback room. Literally our entire quarterback room out in the portal. Our starting running back out in the portal. A lot of our receivers to the NFL. Offensive line, a lot of it. Some guys graduate, some guys stay. That group, a lot of them are back, and there's a big young group. Defensive line, we lost a lot of those guys to the draft, especially the interior linebacker room. We lose some guys, Ruben Hippolyte, but we maintain a lot of it. Corner room, a lot of guys to the portal. Safety room, NFL draft. And so it kind of just feels like, to me, you can't have a question mark at every position group. And it's what really scares me. And it's way too early for me to be like, we're not going to be good next year, because I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to go ahead and tell you guys that. But I'm just saying, I want to let it be known that I'm really concerned, and I think there are too many question marks, especially at pivotal position groups. Like the groups where we have still some question marks, but maybe not as much as others, or the position groups that are probably not or are not as important as some of the groups that where we have big question marks are really, really big and really important for us to address this offseason. And I just think I've talked about this a little bit in previous episodes, but it's like a new era to me in Maryland football. And I don't know if you guys are completely going to get this, but it feels like over the last couple of years, we've had key guys that have been starters for 3 years that have played. Like if you looked at quarterback, of course, we had Talia at receiver. Jay Jones 2 years ago, Ty Felton, Caden Prather this year that have been starters for the last couple years. Roman Hemby's been a starter for the last 3 years. And then you look at guys on the defensive side, like Dante Trader, Bo Braid had been a starter for a while. Glendon Miller had been a guy for a while now. And just it seems like a lot of guys, Tarheeb Still, who's now playing really good for the Chargers, and it feels like a new era for Mike Locksley. And it feels like we're entering a year where there are just so many question marks. And I think before the season, people didn't realize how many question marks last year's team had, but they ended up being true. Almost every position group, quarterback, question mark, offensive line, question mark, the secondary, big question mark almost everywhere. The pass rush, question mark. And this year, I feel like it's even worse. At the most important position groups, we feel like I just feel like there's so many question marks, and I think it's going to be really challenging. Look at quarterback. Malik Washington, we hope, can save Maryland football. We hope he can bring us to a new height. We hope he can do really big things for us in Maryland football and lead us to be really successful next year. But the fact of the matter is he's a freshman, and a freshman starting in the Big Ten is really tough. And that's a humongous question mark. No matter how you shape it, like that's about as big as a question mark as you can get. A team that is not particularly really talented like Maryland is starting a freshman quarterback, so can't really set them up to be really successful. A lot of the plays are going to have to be on them, and that's a big question mark going into next year. And one of the biggest question marks probably in the Big Ten, can Malik Washington be a successful player for Maryland football? And to be honest, we just don't know. We don't know how good he can be. We don't know what he's going to look like. We just don't know what he can be as a player. And there's just a lot of there's at every single position group, our running back room, all of a sudden, a bunch of youngsters that haven't had to take in the load. Nolan Ray has shown flashes. Williams has been a highly talented recruit. But a room that is filled with guys that haven't had to take the load, that's a question mark. That's not one of the bigger ones, but that's definitely a question mark. Receiver room. We lose a guy that was in the Bolitnikov conversation, and we lose a guy in Caden Prather that was really good as well. And we bring in some transfers, but Jaleel, the kid from Oklahoma, he's been hurt last year. So that, to me, yeah, he's been good when he's played, but that's a question mark. Octavian Smith hasn't played sometimes we need him to play. We've seen flashes for sure. UCLA or USC last year stepped up, but that's a big question mark to me. That whole receiver room. Do we have guys that we feel really good about, especially with the young quarterback? Offensive line, I don't even have to explain that to you guys. Horrible last year. That's a humongous question mark. Can they just be okay? To me, that's the question with the offensive line. Can they just be okay? Forget being good. Forget being elite. Can they be okay next year to give Malik Washington a chance? Tight end, we lose Dylan Wade. We lose Preston Howard. We lose our two starters, young guys that I think we really wanted to maintain. To me, that's a big question mark for Maryland football. Dorian Fleming comes in, but I think he comes in from Georgia State. It's just a question. The defense, it's the same exact thing. The secondary, which was horrible last year, we're bringing a bunch of guys. We bring in a couple guys, but it's like it's a big question mark for Maryland football. Can those guys be successful? Are those guys going to be good enough to play? And then you just look down the road. You got no pass rush last year. Our interior defensive line is gone too. The whole thing to me is a question mark. Linebacker room, maybe not as much as some of the other groups. Maybe that's the one group we feel okay about. We still lose Ruben Hippolyte. I just feel like in all, it's hard for me to picture us being really good next year. If you guys want me to be honest, not even really good, just like pretty good. It's hard for me to imagine that because I just see this team and it's way too early, and there's going to be so much more that has to happen with the portal, guys leaving, all these different things. It just feels like there's such a big, like, there's just so many different things that we have to address, and that doesn't even include the coaching staff. To me, Mike Loxley's a bit of a question mark. What can he do without Talia as his quarterback? The offense coordinator, who's the offense coordinator? There's just so many different things where at a certain point, you just have to play the probability and you got to say, maybe this will work out. Like maybe the kid Dorian Fleming will work out, but maybe the new receiver room won't. Or maybe the running backs will work, but the offensive line, even though we get some young guys that are good, Jalen Gilchrist comes in, it just doesn't work out. And so to me, at a certain point, there's too many different question marks where it's impossible to feel good about your team. And I don't think most teams have it like this going into a season. They just don't. And even the middle-ish teams in the Big Ten, I've been saying, they just don't. Even the lower level teams, they're going to feel good about some guys coming back in some position groups. And I don't feel great about any of them. And so let me know what you guys think. What position group do you guys feel good about? Do you guys feel good about any position group? Do you guys feel good about Mike Loxley? Like, we got to start talking about what do we feel good about next year? I feel good about Malik Washington's talent, but he's still a freshman quarterback starting in the Big Ten. So it's hard for me to say that I feel certain. And you like to have some sure things in the game of football that you know are going to perform. And I just think it's going to be challenging. It's way too early. There's a ton of things that have to happen, but I really do believe that. Maryland basketball is heading into conference play with the huge week. What did we learn out of conference play about this team and that will translate to the rest of the year? We'll talk about that next. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That's definitely what happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money has made it easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant to your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals that you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of 500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app premium features. For me, one of the best features is a subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. What did we learn from Maryland basketball this out of conference play? I think we learned some things that are going to be important. I think we learned some things that are good, some things that are not as good, way more good than bad this year. Last year was a little bit concerning. I feel like it was all bad besides, we have a star in Jameer Young. And I know we've played a couple of in-conference games, but we played mainly out of conference at this point. What has it been? 2 in conference with Ohio State and Purdue. But I think we've learned a lot about this team. And I feel like I have a pretty good idea of where this team is at. But I do think we have learned a whole lot about this team and what we're going to be this year. I think for one, we learned that Derek Queen is our best player. In big games, he plays like our best player. And almost every single big game, Derek Queen performed. Whatever game it was, he stepped up. He played at a high level for Maryland basketball, whether it was against Marquette, whether it was against Purdue. In our best games and our biggest games of the year, he was our best player, which I think is really important because I think Maryland this year I don't know if it's like a clear alpha. Like if we needed a shot, who would take it? Is basically what I'm saying. But I believe that Derek Queen has kind of solidified himself as that guy where we want, like with a minute or two left in the game, we want to give him the ball and give him as many touches as we possibly can. And good things are going to happen with Dairy Queen. If we just give him the ball in spots, we let him go to work, we let him do certain things. And I think that that's something that I've learned that he's actually living up to and surpassing what he can become. I think overall, one of my takeaways is that we can shoot the ball this year. Last year, we couldn't shoot the ball straight up. We just couldn't shoot the ball. There was no other way. It was like embarrassing. I was like, is this a college team? Why can't we? Nobody on the team can shoot. Jameer Young was probably our best shooter, and that's not really what his game was. And this year, we can shoot the ball. All three guards in our starting lineup are shooting above 35% from the three-point arc, which I think is pretty big. Gillespie's at 42, Miguel's at 41, Rodney Rice is at 35. So all the guards in our starting lineup are shooting above 35% from three, where last year we only had one guy above that mark. I think Jameer Young was the only guy above that mark last year, where this year we have three guys in our starting lineup, as well as Safari Gapari shooting 40% from three. Jay Young, who plays a good amount of minutes, about 13 minutes a game, is shooting 41% from three. So Malachi Palmer shooting 31%. Like guys that we need to shoot a decent percentage from three are doing that for Maryland basketball. So we shoot the three ball overall 36.6% as a team, which is, I think, a good spot. If you enter the like a 37, 38, like you're a good shooting team. And I think Maryland basketball has been a much better shooting team this year. And that's going to allow us to be a much better team in the Big Ten, where last year we were really good defensively, but we just couldn't shoot the ball, so it didn't matter. And that basketball, some people say, they say the NBA sometimes is a miss or make league, which I don't think is exactly true, but sometimes it really does come down to if you just shoot at a decent percentage. Like sometimes that's just what it is. It's nothing more, nothing less. It can come down to turnovers and how you shoot the ball. And this year we have a team that can shoot the ball much better than we did last year. And I think that leads me to my next point. What I learned from out of conference plays were balance. I saw different players go off at different times. I know I said Derek Queen's kind of the alpha, but I've seen Jacoby Gillespie play like an all Big Ten guard. I just saw a metric that was like he's fourth in the country in terms of point guard production or something like that, which is huge. We've seen every single guy in the starting lineup go off, and I think there's something to be said for that, that balance. And I think that's a really important big thing that Maryland basketball has this year, where in the past we didn't have it last year. And even when we made the tournament, I felt like we were good, but I didn't feel like we were nearly as balanced as this team. This is the best team Kevin Willard has had at Maryland over his 3 years. And I think that's something else I've learned. This is the best team he has. Let's not mess this up. Let's go into this out of this conference schedule knowing that. I think a couple of things that I learned that are a little bit concerning. We don't have depth. Like, I would love to have a guy or two off the bench that I feel really good about, that I'm like, oh, yeah, he could be the sixth man of the year in the Big Ten. Maybe you can't ask for that type of guy always, but I feel like it'd be nice to have a guy that's like, yeah, he can create his own shot off the bench, or he can make a three, or if he goes in, we know he's going to create offense. And I don't think we really have that. We have solid players off the bench, but we don't have a guy that I feel really good about. I'm like, yeah, he can go in there and make a huge impact. We just don't. And I feel a lot better about our team if we had something like that. And I just don't think Maryland has a guy like that. And that's okay. Off the bench, it's better than having a poor starting lineup. But Kevin Willard doesn't want to play his starters as many minutes this season. Or not this season, as he did in the couple of conference games, and the bigger games that we had, like Marquette, Purdue. He played their minutes a lot, the starters' minutes a lot, and he might not think that's sustainable, but he did say that in one of his press conferences this year. But I think overall, those are some things I've learned, but I think we have a really good chance. I'm not going to say we're the favorite, but I think we have a really good chance of winning the Big Ten. Malik Washington has a perfect schedule for him to come in and start right away. We'll talk about that next. So Malik Washington, four-star quarterback for Maryland football, has a perfect schedule to come in and play right away. So I've been talking about the quarterback room, and I've said Mike Locksley messed up the quarterback room, and I still believe that. I think that the room isn't quite where we want in terms of, yeah, we have players here, we have players there that we feel really good about playing for Maryland football. And or we are at the quarterback spot that we feel good about, and in terms of we have experience. I just don't think we have a ton of experience in that room. Like I was like, if Malik Washington's not ready, I'd like to feel like we have a guy that can step in and play right away, and give us a couple of games, give us a season, whatever he may need. And this, I don't feel like we have that. I feel like he's probably going to have to go in right away and play. But there is another side to this that I feel good about. Our schedule next year, our 2025 schedule is perfect for a young quarterback to start. First of all, our first 3 games, none of them are challenging. We play Florida Atlantic first, and then we have Northern Illinois, and then we have Towson. So 3 games that we feel really good about us winning. And to me, that's important. I wouldn't want to start with one of those marquee out of conference games where it's like we're playing like an Alabama or something like that. Not saying that would happen, but you guys know, like there's like the first week, there's like some good games, and like everyone's looking for the good games in the first week, and like sometimes it'll be like a midish level Big Ten playing like a high level SEC, but like there's not a ton of high level matchups, so that's like a big one. Like we wouldn't want Malik Washington thrown into that, but in terms of the first 3 games being Florida Atlantic, NIU, and then Towson, you feel really good about him getting his confidence early, him getting used to a little bit of what we do as an offense, getting used to his receivers, getting used to all those different things. Whereas if we just started with a team like Wisconsin or something like that, it would be a little bit more challenging, and you might get hit more. You might see things that you're not used to seeing. And we're going to feel good because going into our Big Ten play, we're going to have more scout, more game on these guys, more film for him to watch, so he can be more ready than he probably was going to be, whether he started off with some of the big dogs. And then you also look at it, we don't play that many great Big Ten teams, if any. I think is important. He doesn't play Ohio State's defense where it's 5 and 4-star guys everywhere and their pass rush is impossible to block, or Oregon where they're scoring 50 points and it feels like we got to keep up scoring and we got to throw the ball every single down. Or we're not playing Penn State where they have dudes on the defensive line and dudes at corner and the same type of thing, and their defense is a top 5 unit in the country. We don't have those games. We play Michigan. That's the one team you'll point to and be like, oh, they have some guys. Other than that, it's not a hard schedule. So it's really perfect for Malik Washington to come in, play right away, play against some decent Big Ten opponents, good teams, but nobody that you're like, whoa. That's going to be a really hard game. Besides Michigan, because they did reload, you don't feel about that about any team. Like we play Wisconsin, we play Washington, we play Nebraska, we play UCLA, we play Indiana, Rutgers, Illinois, Michigan, like I said, Michigan State. None of those teams you feel really scared about if you're a Maryland fan or if you're Malik Washington. You feel like every game is probably winnable. Maybe you take out Michigan. I don't know what they're going to be next year in terms of their freshman quarterback and all those different things. But I just feel good about Maryland's chances against their schedule and Malik Washington being successful. But I still do think I wish that there was experienced quarterback on the roster that could, like a Billy Edwards, like somebody that's been in the system a little bit. But I do feel good about the schedule, and I think we definitely got benefited in that way. And I think Malik Washington's, for the schedule's sake, has a chance to be successful. That's all we have for today. Thank you for listening to Locked On Terps. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you for listening to Locked On Terps.